Oh, yeah.
Absolutely mandatory. Taking care of business. Major League theme song. You never know what you're going to get out of the gate. Overdrive off and running on a beautiful Monday here in Toronto. TSN 1050, the TSN app, your home smart speaker up on TSN. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, and Jamie Noodles McLennan. How we feeling?
I feel really good. Incredible weekend of hockey. I mean, Saturday, you go from the Leafs to the end of the Sens game. I mean, Vancouver in overtime. What an hour-and-a-half stretch there for the Canadian hockey teams. Mm-hmm. And I got a little something for you, Hazy B. We did the mood meter, and after the Vancouver game, they went right to Uncle Ricky Tocchet on the bench, and man, did he have a grin. I mean, did he have a grin? And earlier in the day, Marty St. Louis is pissed. He's had enough of that nonsense in Montreal. He's in the rebuild. But I felt like I won the mood meter because old Uncle Rick just ear to ear, and he was so happy, man. Wow, was he happy.
So until 7 minutes left in that game, because I was watching it too, the look on his face is he wanted to chew somebody's head right off because they were down 2 Cobb. Keep in mind, they came back and they scored. And listen, a win is a win is a win. We don't criticize a win, but his face looked like he was chewing on glass there for a while. And then he was fine because they won in overtime.
Exactly. You come back, you win in overtime, it's all good. I'll tell you why he was really not in the mood. Was because the Green Men returned on Saturday night.
Dude, thank you very much.
Two idiots in Vancouver.
Pardon me.
I think it's the dumbest thing in sports.
No, you don't.
I do.
That is entertainment right there, and that is awesome, and I'm glad they're back.
No,
you want to talk, dude?
One guy's got a tarp on, though. Tarp in the pool.
Well, the other guy put on 20 since the last time they showed up, and he's like,
"You honestly don't like that?"
Back in his suit. I think it's so silly. I think it's
I
so
love
silly.
it. I love those guys, and I think there should be 10 of them around the penalty box.
Okay.
I don't know why if you didn't get a ticket, depending on the frame you had, if you're around the penalty box, you put a green suit on, and you be one of them. I love those guys. I want to have a FaceTime.
You're a fan.
The next time they go to the game, I want to FaceTime the 2 guys with their faces like that before the game just to say hello and let them know how much I appreciate them.
My question is for Hayes. Why don't you like them on a show that we've celebrated? Dartman, the guy from Hamilton, Rick Bushwood. These guys fall into that category. Did they not?
Rick Bushwood isn't asking the guy in the penalty box to shotgun a beer with him or hotboxing with Demoriers or something. The guy's not doing that.
But why do you not like them?
For starters, I genuinely I don't know the answer, but where have they been while the team's been terrible? I'm curious about that. Like, where have they been? That team's been pretty awful for a while. Point. Now, all of a sudden, they're going back to the playoffs, and the Green Men come
so you're claiming the Green Men with the Egos, they're not loyal, and they didn't stick around with the team.
I'm very curious.
He's calling them fair weather fans.
Are they fair weather fans? Are they the same guys? How would we know? I mean, how would you ever know? And I just wonder if it is the same guys, and it's been 7 or 8 years, and I mean, they look like they're probably around our age. I'm really curious if they're like, I can't keep doing it, man. I can't keep putting the suit on and going and being silly and goofy and wild. And the guy
that's
in the
just
box,
not feasible. Not in this country.
Exactly. I don't need the Green Men back.
Does anyone found out who they are? Are they actors?
I'm sure people in Vancouver
I've met one of them. I swear on my life, I've met one of them. I
thought the crowd, a lot of the crowd was like, hey, all right, man, good to see you. There they are. Great, they're back. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, these guys are back. Like, seriously, now we're going to be known as – because now it's the Green Men are back. And, hey, look at them. They're wild and wacky. And are they going to be at every game as opposed to look what's going on behind the bench with Rick Tocchet. I want to see Rick Tocchet. I want to see his facial expressions. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see guys in green spandex unitards, doing handstands at the penalty box.
There he is. Look at my guy, Uncle Rick on the bench.
That's what I want to see. I love Rick Tocchet.
Look at this guy. Oh, yeah, fist pumps.
I love it.
I got to be honest, though. I don't know if we know it's the real guys because back then, when they were very popular, they were doing handstands. They were doing like cartwheels and stuff.
Right.
I don't know if these characters can pull that off.
Well, because they're older now,
sure.
Noodles. One guy's got a new knee. The other guy blew his back out. The other
You're
guy.
acting like when they first showed up, they were 35, and now they're 70, and they can't do tricks anymore.
How would you know, man? How would you know? All I know is if I was in those shoes, if I was in that leotard, I'd be like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'll go out once. But I wear a suit to work. I got kids in school. I'm working on a renovation. Like, look at that guy.
Yeah.
Look at that guy. It's so unnecessary. Again, I think a lot of the crowd was kind of like, oh, they're back. That's great.
Dude, what are
I
you talking
think
about?
They got
the
a
crowd
big ovation.
loved
I
them.
don't think so.
I just,
I
you know
don't
what
think
we
so.
need to do is we need to have a contest. You know how like was it Scooby-Doo where they'd always take the mask off at the end?
Yeah.
Like we should guess who is in that. Like for fun. Like
I'm going
the
to say
top
Jim
10
Benning
list,
is
top
one of the guys. Put me down for Jim Benning. I'll take the one guy who put the
Who
jersey
is like
on as Jim Benning.
who's under the
It's
mask?
Jimmy
That's what
Benning
we
and
should
Jurke
do.
Lume in those outfits. That's who's in
Oh,
there.
it'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
That would
Like,
be
it just
You're right, Noodles. That would be hilarious. A reveal, and it's like, who is that?
a
in there?
reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, anyway,
exactly.
they're back, and the Canucks are rolling. You're right. You know, a lot of Canadian coaches are very happy. Jacques Martin, we had him low on the list. Ottawa won again. He's wearing his Stanley Cup ring to games. I noticed that. And we've got
I noticed that.
Bruce Cassidy in an hour. I want to ask Bruce, like, have you ever worn the ring that you won last year, behind the bench? Have you worn it out? They were at the Hall of Fame. Vegas is in town. The Golden Knights, of course, are playing the Leafs tomorrow night. And Bruce Cassidy will join us in about an hour. And, Vegas will be in one tomorrow. The way the Leafs are playing, the Leafs will be in one too because Vegas, they're obviously a good team. They're trying to continue to push, and it's tough coming off a road trip, especially a successful one. The mojo's there for the Leafs. Everything's breaking their way. But they do it again on Saturday night, down 2-0.
That was their best game.
They
was
were
their best game.
outstanding. I thought they were outstanding on Saturday night. I thought they were better in Vegas technically. Like their first period in Vegas was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But
Vegas,
the two-pack, this is what I would say, Noodles. In terms of a two-game stretch, if you had told me earlier in the year they're going through Vegas and then Colorado, I'd say they get a point or two, they'd be pretty happy. Not only did they get 4, they blew the doors off those teams and deserved 4 points. They were clear-cut the better team throughout 60 minutes, basically. And even when they're down 2-0, I'm like, they'll be okay. Leafs are playing well. They'll figure this out, and they did.
The Vegas one was a good win, great win, obviously, but Vegas didn't have their full team. Colorado did. That was my marker for them. That's like end of a road trip. It's easy to rest on your laurels. It's a tough building to play in. It's a mile above sea level. Like there were so many excuses to pack it in. Like for me, that was their best win in my opinion. Even though the Vegas was a lot more convincing, it just to me coming back from two Cobb. Like it was star power on star power. There wasn't guys missing on each team. Like I thought that was their best effort for me.
2
just
months
on that
ago,
road trip.
Noodles, that game in Colorado that started out 2-0. I think we could all agree that it would
6-2.
most likely, it ended up 6-2, where they get a couple at garbage time at the end of the game, and it would just be like, we didn't have it tonight. But for them, and it starts with all the elements of the game. The big guys stood up and made big plays. Tyler Bertuzzi contributed with a massive night. And the goaltender made some massive saves at 2-0. I think Samsonov made that slide across save. I don't know what the score was when he made that, but it's like he stood up and made some big saves that allowed the team. Because if he lets in a garbage one after 2-0, it's curtains. It's over, and you're not coming back from 3-0. It's just mentally a thing where it's like, 2-0, you got a shot where it's like, get the next one, we're right back in the game. But if he gives up a garbage goal, it's curtains and it's over. So just kudos to the way they're playing. And I was talking with the guys in the morning. It's like they look like a team. There's a lot of expected this and expected that, whether it be goals against. They are contributing right now the expected mandatory amount of effort and give a crap meter that's necessary in that league. And they've got enough skill. When you put it all together, you're going to get wins like that. So give them all the flowers that they deserve because they're awesome right now, and we've dumped on them enough. But I don't know how long this lasts, but for right now, this 7-game segment, they look like a team that gives a crap, and they care about each other, and they're contributing, and they're getting goaltending. And when you have all of those elements, you got an NHL hockey team. And right now, a really, really good one.
Well, it has to last the rest of the season. is what it has to do. If it doesn't, then
Yeah, no
all
kidding.
this is meaningless.
I totally agree. It's like, what are you if it's just a blip on the screen?
Right.
Where we had all of those elements that I just mentioned.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean you won't dip. Edmonton's going through it right now. Edmonton won 16 in a row. They're not playing well. Like, they look really poor. And they're not getting stops. And defensively, there's a struggle. And I've noticed the markets that, Draisaitl's taking a lot of heat. And he's maybe moving up with McDavid. And it's like, we got to get him going. And that can happen. You can have ups and downs, but you don't want to waste what's a good run. But you're far enough into the season now where it's like you got to get cooking and cooking for good. John Cooper had a quote on that over the weekend. Yeah, it's like you're almost into March here. You can't have all right, we'll dip and we'll come back up. Like, it's too late now. Like, now that you've hit it, you just got to keep going and going and going and rising and rising and rising. And the Leafs are in a position now where all of, whatever happened the first 40, 45 games, and it's not like they were ever awful or terrible or out of the playoffs or anything. They were always in the playoffs and always chugging along, but there were lulls in their game. There were areas of concern. There were players that were inconsistent. The goaltending was up in the air at times. And now Joseph Woll is back, and we believe ready to go. And I would assume Samsonov will start tomorrow. I haven't seen Keith answer anything on that, but I would guess Samsonov will get the start tomorrow. But Woll will return at some point. You can have a battle there for who's going to get the net come game one, right? They got, 23, 24 games left to figure that out. But you're healthy. You're putting guys in the lineup that are there because they deserve to be there. Bobby McMahon's a great example. He gets to keep playing, as he should, because he's playing very well. He's performing. John Tavares on the third line. He's staying there, You're not moving things now because everything's moving in the right direction. And if it stays this way, then keep this lineup effectively the way it is with a couple of tweaks and roll the dice and get cooking.
Well, that's what it's what you just talked about, Brian. There's healthy competition now. If you're healthy, like if you got guys coming back, Yarncroke is skating.
Yep.
Yeah.
Noah
He's
Gregor's
an interesting
on the
guy
outside
coming back. All Noodles, he looked like a guy that was like, man, he's so valuable. Now it's like, where are you putting him?
Well, you'll find room for him. I mean,
Obviously.
he's a guy that has to be in the lineup. Like at the end of the day, I know Bobby McMahon's a great story, and he reminds me. I meant to bring this up, guys. Late bloomer. Does he remind you a little bit of Mason Marchment? Not that Marchment kind of gets under your skin, plays hard, has some skill, all of that.
It's a
but
great
Marchment
comparison.
wasn't a guy.
It's a great comparison.
Marchment wasn't a guy who made the NHL at 21 type of thing. McMahon is older. Marchment is more of a mature player now. I think he's 25, I think. But it just, to me, I watched Marchment live the other night, and then watching McMahon, I'm like, they kind of have a little bit of, they got to go out and earn it, go out and work it. And Marchment's been a great player and has settled in the top 6 in Dallas. But I'm saying, like, late bloomer, kind of remind me, kind of tall, play with some grit. It was a good comparison in thinking about it because not everybody's path to the NHL is just smooth, right? It takes a little bit longer to settle in at the NHL level. McMahon looks like he's a player, which I a month ago I would have argued and said not a chance. Personally.
Well, and again, as I've said multiple times over the last 2 weeks, this doesn't mean you pencil him in on a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan or something. All you need out of Bobby McMahon, if you're the Leafs, is the rest of the regular season and the playoffs, and then you'll sort it out. And if he fades away, that would suck for him. I'm pulling for him. It's a great story. Seems like a really good guy, beloved in the room. But if you're not every player that shows up out of nowhere all of a sudden is a guy that is a Leaf forever. Like that's not the way it works. And every single playoff team that has success has a player or two that seemingly comes out of nowhere, makes an impact for that spring, and then that's it. And the Leafs are due for that. Every team kind of needs it. And if Bobby McMahon's going to play that role, if Simone Benoit is going to play that role, guys that were not on the radar 3 or 4 months ago at all, but all of a sudden find a mojo, they're in their primes, they're in their mid-20s, they play with aggression, they show up to play every night, they're hungry to do it, you can get a lot of results out of that. And it may be short-lived. Hopefully it's not for their sake, but it might be. But if it is and you're the Leafs, that's fine. You just got to fill roles for the next 4 months. That you're almost at the finish line. Like we're almost into March, right? You don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
So you're going to get through 82 games. That's not the story anymore.
Yeah, just stay hot for the next 5 months.
Exactly.
Well,
like
maybe
it's asking a lot.
Lonnie Bahanas.
Yeah, well, exactly. Lonnie Bohannes is an example of that. There's a guy that he came up out of nowhere, had a great run, and then that was it. And again, I'm not predicting that for McMahon. I don't know what his future is going to be. I've been thoroughly impressed with him. I love his story. I like the way he plays. He's aggressive. He forechecks. He grinds. I think he's making Tavares' life a lot easier because John's just like, you're going to go fight, man. You go get that. I'll be in a good position. And it's a smart way of setting up that lineup right now.
Very simple recipe. It's like, Bobby, go get the puck in the corner, and I'll be behind the net, and then I'll look for Nick Robertson in the slot.
Right.
Everybody's got a role, so go out there and do it. And it's very simple, and everyone understands.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's really been a pretty simple flip that happened because Tavares got injured a little bit. I think he missed a game due to injury and a game due to illness. And it coincided with Bobby McMahon showing up out of nowhere, Domi having to move up, and the rest is history. And, we'll see where we're at in a week or two or a month or two. But as of now, just flipping Domi with Tavares and McMahon showing up has changed the top nine completely. Like, it's changed the whole vibe of the top nine. Yeah, it's depth, but like Bertuzzi's come alive. Domi has played well. I like Domi with Willie more because they can skate. Like, Willie wants to move. And, Tavares can't keep up when you're moving through the neutral zone and John's trying to get there and Willie's like, let's go. Max can. Like, Domi can skate. And it's worked.
Yeah, I agree. And it adds depth because what Tavares has is lesser matchups too.
Right.
McMahon could get the puck and Tavares knows what he is. Like he's strong around the net, he's strong in the corners getting the puck, and if he gets to open ice, he can use that shot. So, the flip has worked. We'll see how long it lasts. I would argue it's probably going to last the rest of the season, and it probably should.
As of
based
now,
on where
Isn't it
Tavares
crazy,
is at.
guys? How
Absolutely.
a switch like that, where you would almost think of it when it happened as something that was going to be somewhat catastrophic, where it's like, how the hell is this going to pan out? Like, no Tavares, and Max Domi's on the second line centerman, hasn't been putting up massive numbers. I'm pretty sure everyone had somewhat of a pessimistic look at that when it was going down. And for it to change the whole vibe of the season, basically, that's just kind of mojo in sports where, I don't know, it just all comes together. Even Morgan Riley being out and everyone settling in on defense, where the whole year we've been like, what in the hell are those guys doing back there? All of them. Yeah. Each and every guy took a turn in the back end.
Wow.
Just absolutely being a gong show. Now they've settled in.
Wouldn't you argue that T.J. Brody's play has been probably the biggest turnaround on the back
noticeably different and noticeably improved, and he deserves some flowers because I felt awful breaking down some of the plays where a lot of the games we did and the puck was getting pulled out of the Leafs net, he was directly responsible for it. And it wasn't just kind of a 50-50 where it was his fault or maybe not. It was directly responsible. He was. And now he's just solid. And I think that's all you can ask of him right now. Just be solid, make some skill plays with the puck if you have it. If you can make that cross-ice pass, go ahead. But it's just been a lot more responsible and a lot more engaged, and he deserves some props because he had a pretty miserable first half of the season.
Yeah, no, and he's probably been the best example, like a microcosm of how things have turned here. They've won 7 in a row, and the first 5, it started when he moved to the left side without Riley. And he stayed there over the weekend. He's going to stay there tomorrow. As far as I'm concerned, that's just not an option anymore. Like, he has to stay on the left side. And he practiced today with McCabe. That's where it's going. That's what they've done in the playoffs. All year it would be Brody and Riley. They got to the playoffs 3 years ago. Then it was Brody and Muzzin. Last year I think it was Brody and McCabe, I believe. And this year it's probably going to be Brody and McCabe again in the playoffs. And I would guess they'll go maybe Benoit, Liljegren as their third pair, and they got to figure out what they're going to do with Riley. But you got until next Friday at the deadline to figure that out. And if you're not going to acquire something between now and then, you've got, 6 weeks to figure it out. But that's really the only part of the discussion right now that they feel they really have to figure out. Doesn't mean they won't want to make improvements or shouldn't make improvements if they can, if it's a reasonable price. But right now, again, with these 7 wins, what they've done is given themselves a quality buffer, which they needed. They need a little bit of breathing room, feel good about yourself, right? Keep plugging away. And now they're as close based on points to like Florida and Boston as they are to Tampa behind them, really. You know, it's like they're closing. They're Florida. They're 6 points back. They're 5 points up on Tampa. And as of now, again, there's a lot of games in hand. But it kind of feels like 5 teams from the Atlantic are going to make the playoffs. You know, Detroit is really chugging. And that story in Chicago last night was incredible with Patrick Kane winning it in overtime.
Jesus, man, that was something
incredible.
else.
And it coincided earlier in the day with Kucherov going into Jersey and putting 4 points on the board. He's up to 102 points. It's February, and Tampa's in a position where they feel pretty good. It's crazy what's going on.
Well, but it's funny how a week changes, right? Like you have a good week where you win 3 games, or you have a bad week where you lose 3 games. You see the effects of it, and that's the crazy part. Yeah, the Leafs aren't going to win every game the rest of the season, but if they continue to have the winning ways, the winning formula, then it sets up. That's what you want. Mm-hmm. Has it changed your outlook for the deadline? Where are you guys?
That's what I wanted to ask
Friday?
KZB, because I think a couple of weeks ago you're like, maybe this just isn't the year, and you just stand pat. Like the 7 games, could that possibly change your mind? Or more importantly, would it be stupid as a general manager of an NHL hockey team to have a differing view or approach to their team after a 7-game stretch? That is the $1 million question.
That's the more – you should never change your mind based on 7 games. Like that to me is ridiculous. We had these conversations earlier in the year with Willie. Now, in the end, Nylander ended up getting his deal and, okay, we move on. But I remember like 5 games in, people were like, you got to pay him $12 million. Like if five games, they're going to change their position in terms of negotiating. I would say what's happened is actually the opposite for me. It's reinforced the fact that the horses you have are the horses that are going to drag you to the finish line here. And to clarify, I have never been against bringing in depth pieces. I've stated this countless times. I've been saying it for weeks, and I know other people are picking up on this. Go find this year's Luke Schenn for a 3rd-round pick. I'm cool with that. I thought Luke Schenn was phenomenal in the role he played last year. You want to give up a 3rd and get the equivalent of Luke to play with Morgan Rielly? That was their best pairing. That pairing was great down the stretch. Great against Tampa, and I thought very good against Florida. Go for it. You want to do that? By all means. You want to give up depth pieces and, middling prospects or whatever to grab someone on the 4th line that you want to plug in? Absolutely. But this 7-game stretch has proven to me, if they're going anywhere, it's because Matthews is going to drag them, and Marner is going to drag them, and Bertuzzi, and Domi, and Rielly, and whoever's going to play in net. The guys they have, they're not improving on that. We're talking, okay, a right shot defenseman for Rielly. That would be ideal. That would be great. But if you're not willing to pay that price 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't pay it now. Like if it's Tanev, if they're holding strong on it's got to be a first or it's got to be whoever it's got to be, if you didn't want to pay that then, why would you pay it now? Like I'd be kicking tires on other options and cheaper options. And yeah, I think again, my stance on it has always been that we're so hyper focused. It's always like trade deadline, contract. What's the contract going to be? What are we doing? It's like it doesn't always have to be that way. Like the heavy lifting.
It's always been like that in this market, though.
Right, and it hasn't done anything. They haven't won a cup in 55 years.
I know. It's just like, they got to go get this guy.
Right.
And Joe from the bridges around the world. No, I know. But the Joe from the bridges around the world, it's fantasy hockey, and it's like, go do this and go do that, and it's just not even realistic.
Right. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I don't know about you guys, but I don't see that changing between now and next Friday, unless there's a major injury or something. But that's a completely different conversation.
But what does that mean, though?
Yeah.
If it's moving off of Hanifin to Tanev, it's going to who?
Well, I mean, again, based on the trade
it depends on the marketplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I still one defenseman is mandatory. One defenseman who
mandatory.
Mandatory. Because, again, been a good stretch, but what happens is some guys who play above their ceiling, the playoffs sort that out. So you need somebody. I would love to see somebody who can play in that top 4 role, gives more depth, pushes guys around. Again, they never replaced Klingberg. Never replaced him. That was a guy that they
never really showed up
in their
either.
top 4.
He was never really
understood, but that's the money. My point is the money.
Yes.
That's the player they'd given.
I don't mean that No disrespect to Arizona,
but you just had to fit that
completely
in.
I'm just saying, yes.
Complete disrespect.
Sorry about that.
There's no disrespect to Arizona.
No. Yeah, but my point is they've had the flexibility to do that if they wanted to. They haven't done it. They haven't found the right fit. I still believe like that was coming to before the 7-game stretch, and whatever this ends up being, I still believe that should be the main focus, is adding depth to that position.
Well, I would assume that would be their thought process here, Noodles. And again, this is our own view of it. It's not a prediction. I don't know what they're going to do.
No.
They very well could spend that first. They could trade a really high prospect. They could trade multiple prospects. Maybe they put Robertson out. Maybe they put other players out on the line. I mean, all of this is I'm sure, on the table, of course. But, based on the information we have, you look at TSN's trade bait board, it's Tanev, Hannafin, and then you're looking at guys that should not cost anywhere close to a high pick or a number one prospect or close to it. Like, nowhere close to it. You're talking good depth players, which may not match that top 4 option you're talking about, though, Noodles. So, what is that worth? Is it a 3rd, 4th round pick? Again, I use Luke Shen, and apples to oranges, every player is different. Doesn't mean every situation is going to replicate itself. I understand that. Last year when he got picked up with a 3rd rounder, I think we were all like, depth piece, maybe he's the 7th guy, comes in and out. He found his role, he played it, right? And maybe that has to happen again. Like if you get Tanev or something, Tanev's playing. Like that's obvious. He's going to fit in right with Riley. There's your guy. That's your match. And you move on.
Right.
But Tanev's going to cost them a fair amount that I'm sure they could have paid 2 weeks ago. And if they didn't pay 2 weeks ago, why would they pay now? Like that's what I can't understand.
Unless prices might be going up, they might be going down, they might be reset based on.
I hate, honestly,
marketplace.
Noodles. I can't hear that prices going up. It's like if you want a guy, just friggin' get him. Like it's just like, prices are too high. Like you're telling me that some of these teams are going to sit and after the deadline they're be like, man, we didn't unload some of the guys because our prices with that. Just make a deal. Like there's a deal there. I don't get it. I know. Like
I agree, but go ahead.
I just don't understand that where it's like, it's just like selling a house. You sell your house for whatever the hell someone's going to give it to you for it. That's the way it works. Yeah. It's like you can put any number you want on it, but whatever someone's willing to offer you, that's how much your house goes for. So it's one thing to have all these bright ideas and high expectations for the return on some of these guys, but it's what somebody's going to give for you. So figure it out.
Right.
I just hate this setting the market and waiting for this guy to go.
The deadline's 3 p.m. Like that's where the pressure will be on, right? And Calgary's in a bind because they're winning games. Like they're kind of in it now, and we'll see. That's a courageous move by Conroy. I think he'll do it. But if you flip those guys out, you're telling everyone in that room, I don't care what you just did, we're out. Like this season, we are out, and it's probably the right play in terms of the big picture, but. They're not forced to make a deal until you either meet their price or it's $259 next Friday, and then they better smarten up and take whatever's out there. But the game of chicken is likely going to continue, and the Leafs aren't the only team calling. There's 30 other teams. There's 10, 12 other playoff teams that would take those guys, and it's a game of chicken among those GMs as much as anyone else, right? We're seeing that in baseball right now with these players who are still free agents. It's almost like collusions. All the teams are like, we're all committed to this. We're not paying that guy more than $80 million. Okay, we're all committed to it. We're not going to fall for it and get caught. So there's a lot of dancing going around among GMs in the NHL. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to see Tanev. I'd love to see Hannafin. That'd be great. But there's a price that has to be paid. And at some point, you got to realize, you got to have a future too, regardless of what's happening this year. Anyway, we'll see. Yeah. Bruce Cassidy coming up in about a half an hour. We'll get into a number of things from over the weekend in the NHL. The Jays are back in action. The Raptors are in action there in Indiana tonight, playing Pascal Siakam. We'll look ahead to that. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. Drive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Well, we survived our weekend. We're up at Blue Mountain. Want to give a shout-out to 24-Hour Blue Mountain, Frank Abels, the Abels crew, everyone up there. Just an incredible event for Special Olympics Ontario. Awesome vibe, awesome buzz. The whole Bar Down crew was up there, too. It was great to see them. And it almost happened again. I told you guys last week, I've told you multiple times, where my wife and I, our relationship almost came to an end about 2 months into dating. At Blue Mountain, I got up to the top of the hill.
You guys went up there?
So this was different. We had the kids out, right? Trying to teach the kids how to ski. So I am dying today, man. I look like Ben Roethlisberger at the end of his career. We talk about ice bags, knees, hips, shoulders, but they did great. But, my youngest daughter's not even 5 yet, and we did one run where we went up a chairlift. And when you're talking to a kid and they're staring at you, but you kind of have an understanding they're not registering what you're talking about.
Nothing, dude, nothing.
They have no idea. So we're on our way up, and I'm explaining to them, like, when we get to the top,
get ready.
Get ready. Like, you got to get your skis down. And she's just staring
your butt off the lift.
Exactly. I'm like, you got to get up. You got to get your. And she's just staring at me. And I'm like, do you understand what I'm saying? And she's just staring at me. I'm like, okay, let's give it a shot. So we get up there, and we get to the top. She doesn't move. So I have a split-second thing. I'm like, I got to grab her.
You got to grab her and get her off.
So I grab her. What do? Yard sale. Wipe out.
You bite it.
I'm at the bottom of the chairlift, and I can hear someone coming. I know someone's going to say, Hayes is a fraud, as they burn by me on the chairlift. Like, I know it's coming. Hayes, you're a fraud. And I'm like, here we go. And then I'm down, and you know me. I'm 6'2". I'm a big guy. And my wife's yelling at me. She's like, get up. I'm like, I can't get up. Like, I can't. You gotta get me out. You got to latch me out of the skis. So it's like Frank and Estelle Costanza at the top of the chairlift. She's like, get up, you idiot. You got to move. I'm like, I can't. Latch me out. You got to get me out. We're yelling at each other up there.
In a relationship, that's just called a zinger. It's like, you can't get up, and the one thing your significant other has to say is, you need to get the hell up right now. And it's like, thanks a lot. Like, I really needed that. I really needed that.
And by then, both my kids were up. They want to move. They're basically saying move. And I'm like, I'm going to lose my mind. Because I took one for the team. Like, they don't understand. I could have gotten up. I stuck with it because I was worried she was going to loop all the way back around. I had to make a judgment call. And anyway, it was a great weekend. Once we got past that. And just a great buzz up there. So, again, I want to thank everyone for coming out and being a part of that. There was actually a number of things that came up while I was talking with people, over the course of the week. And a lot of people buzzing about the Leafs, obviously. How are you feeling about the Leafs? What do you make of the Canadian teams doing what they're doing? Jets are looking good. Oilers, not so much. Vancouver got off the snide. One name came up at least a handful of times. You guys want to guess which name came up, one player in particular?
Tyler Bertuzzi.
No. Let me think.
He's a New York
Connor
Ranger.
Brown?
He's a New York Ranger.
Rempe.
Oh, this kid fighting every
Matt
night.
Rempe.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, the kid, the monster down in New York, who is taking on basically everybody. Matt Rempe is his name. He's a 21-year-old. He's 6'8", like 220. And he's fighting on the first shift against heavyweights in the league. And he fought Delorier in Philly on Saturday. That's the fight of the decade. Like, these two were throwing bombs at center ice. Mm-hmm. And then he fought, I can't remember his name, out of Columbus, Olivier. And Olivier
dude is tough as hell, man.
And Olivier got him. Like, he got him last night.
Yeah.
Like, he really laid a beating on him last night. But this is after fighting Matt Martin outside in his first game. Like, he's meeting at center ice. For starters, he's stretching at center ice, so he's sending a vibe out to begin with.
I love that.
And these guys are coming over, and they're saying, I want a piece. And what's amazing is he's fighting every night to start every game, and he's 21 years old. It can't continue. You can't fight heavyweights every single night.
No.
You
well,
just
he's
can't
got
do
to
it.
learn. He's got to learn how to do it. And I was talking about this with somebody today. First of all, that's a 6th-round draft pick, and I bet you everybody in the New York Rangers loves playing with him. While you're drafting your circus carnies from Europe that don't play 2 shifts in the NHL because they don't compete enough and they're not good enough. This guy's making an impact, 6th-round draft pick. But what I would do with that guy, I would teach him the ropes and say it doesn't have to be every shift and it doesn't have to just be a bomb fest. I would get Chaser. I'm not kidding. I would fly Kelly Chase to New York and meet him at the practice rink for 2 or 3 days after practice over 4 and teach him the ins and outs. Because I'm not kidding you, Kelly Chase was the best technical fighter to ever do it. He didn't have the biggest frame, the biggest build, the biggest hands, but he knew how to hang in there. And there's just the timing of it. Just explain the timing of it. Sometimes when your team's playing well, you don't want to be a chicken, but it's like, I don't want to be doing this to give them. There's so much that goes into the timing of that. And there's so many little different things that go into it. I would bring in Chaser for 2 days and say, this is how this gig goes. And I'm not kidding. I would do that.
And you're hearing guys weigh in on him too, like guys online that are excited about it because it is, you're right, Hayes, it is a buzz throughout the league. The concern is, though, I think it was one former tough guy, I'm not sure who was being interviewed, said, I'm concerned this kid's leading with his chin. Like just what you said,
right.
Like technically he's just throwing bombs. Like there's no,
he doesn't know how to fight.
Technical
he's got the
background.
stones to
exactly.
fight.
He's just going. Yeah, so I don't know, man. Like it is, and I don't know if you heard his interview. It was unbelievable. Like he was just, I want to fight. I want to do anything I can to stay in the NHL. It's impressive, this kid.
Yeah, that was with Emily Kaplan, which is saying something. It's an ESPN game. It's Rangers Flyers. It was Hockey Day in America all weekend, and he's out there going with guys, but it's like back to back first shift heavyweights. You just can't do that. Like, you couldn't do that in the 80s and 90s. You had to pick your spots. There's nothing wrong with saying, no, like, not yet. Maybe later in the game, maybe next time we play, because, these other guys, like, Delorier's 33 or so. He's been in the league for a while. Like, he's been around.
Dude, that guy is
tough
one of the
as
toughest
nails
of all time. Yeah.
He's very tough, but he's looking at it like, hey, I'll have a go because why not? Matt Martin, the same thing. Martin's been in the league for 15 years, tough as nails. And he's like, I know who you are if you want to go. And I think they're looking at it like, hey, this is a big moment for me too now, because by the time he got to Olivier, it's like everyone's buzzing about this kid. Like everyone's talking about this kid who's 6'8", playing for the Rangers, fighting everybody on the first shift. And it's creating incredible buzz. And I posted a poll on this, like genuinely curious how people would respond to it. Like, what is the easiest way or the quickest way to make a name for yourself in the NHL? Is it fighting heavyweights or is it scoring goals? And I think it's fighting. Like, I think fighting is so unique now. It doesn't happen nearly as much. But some of the biggest characters in the history of the game are fighters. Like, obviously you have Gretzky, Lemieux, or Howe. But you talk to a lot of people that have watched the game for 40 or 50 years. If you say Domi, Probert, McSorley, they know them too.
What about the commentators? The one in Philadelphia, Ray was on the call. I don't know who his play-by-play guy was, but he said, I haven't seen a tilt like this in the longest time. And then 2 days later in Columbus, it was like, man, that was awesome. I haven't seen that in forever.
Yeah, I know. Like this.
And whatever you think of it, everyone has differing opinions on what goes on with that stuff. But for the New York Rangers, a 6th-round draft pick, and I bet you Zibanejad, Panarin, Lafreniere, and all the rest of them are feeling pretty good when that guy's on their team. Making an impact. I don't know how long it lasts. I don't know how long he'll play for. But for right now, he stays in the lineup, and I'm sure everybody loves what he's bringing to the table.
Well, again, he also had that hit on Bastion, right? That was him. Like, he threw that hit on Thursday night against the Devils, where he destroyed Bastion with a hit. So he's arrived, and this is also a way of getting to the NHL. Not everyone gets there because they're first overall pick, 5th overall pick, stud Neo that shows up and it's like, I'm going to score and I'm a good player and I know I'm here because I'm very talented. A lot of guys in the history of this league have had to say, I got to fight if I got to fight. I got to hit if I got to hit. Someone's got to play on the 4th line and make $1.5 million. I'll do it. Someone's like, those roles are still available in the NHL.
Yeah. And well, Saturday night, Hayes, he's in Toronto, so that'll be interesting. Because
you think Reeves will fight him?
I don't know, man. Reeves has he had 2 fights in the first 2 games. He hasn't fought since. I don't know if Reeves will fight.
What are you talking about?
I'm not saying he wouldn't be willing to fight. I'm just not convinced he shows up like tapping him on the laces saying, let's go.
I guarantee it'll be the other way around. Ryan Reeves will be like, all right, you think you're the king of the castle? I'll talk to you in the first period whenever you get out there.
Yeah.
And I'll still show you that I'm the king. I guarantee you that will go down.
That's possible. Rempe by then may have been told by someone on his team, though, you got to stop. Like, you got to settle down a little bit.
Right.
Because you can't dance. Like, you can't go over the course of 2 weeks like Matt Martin, Delorier, Olivier, Reeves. I can tell you, Jack Guy in Montreal's waiting for him. I guarantee you that. That kid will fight him in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And Reeves is going to probably he has to go Jack Guy when they play again, based on opening night. what happened there. And he was talking about it after, like, I'll see him down the road. So there's one circled. Like, Reeves is going to still have fights, and I'm not saying that Reeves wouldn't fight anyone. He would. He clearly would. But he hasn't run into that this year. Like, they played Philly. He was out there, I believe, when, other guys are Delorier, Olivier. Those guys aren't fighting right now. That's what makes this so incredible is that Rempe it's going everyone. Like, he's stretching at center ice, and these guys are like, let's have a word. First shift, let's go. It's like, wow, that is like 1987 hockey. Like, we do not see that anymore. It's wild.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great, but everyone's buzzing about it. That's what it is. I think I agree with though. I think Reeves is going to tap him and say, "You want a piece of me?"
I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you who's been doing this a long time. And see. But you're right, Hayes. How long has it been? Is that the first 2 games of the season, and that's the only 2 fights he's been in?
As far as I can recall, Reeves has had 2 fights. He fought Foligno and Jack-Eye the first 2 games of the year, or 2 of the first 3. Remember, he threw monster hits, and those guys stepped in.
Yeah. And I don't know. You're right. I can't remember one after that.
No, I don't believe he has. Now, he hasn't played every game. Clearly, he missed a lot of games, and he was out of the lineup, a healthy scratch, injured. But the time will come where he will fight again, and I would assume it's Rempe. Again, Jack-Eye's coming. Like, that's happening. He is going to fight. I'd be shocked if he didn't. Jack-Eye, they play them twice in Montreal, like the last week and a half of the season.
Sure brings some juice, I'll tell you that. We've talked about it before. Even the Maple Leafs, sometimes you get some guys that are just like, I'm going to go out there to play my shifts and go up and down the wing. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to offend anybody. I want to get it in, get it out. And you're just a guy. You're just a guy out there. You have zero impact on anything, negatively or positively.
Yeah.
At least this guy wants to be known and wants to make a reputation. And he's not just going to be quiet. Like, whether it's offensive production or being physical with body checks or fighting, it's like, it's so easy to just go out there and be a guy and just say, you skate well, you get it in, you're pretty safe. But
there's different avenues, man. And this is going to challenge, like, where the game is at, because the NHL's not going to promote it because they can't anymore because, of the science behind it, the medicine behind it, what we know about it, lawsuits. They're not going to promote it anymore. But this will be self-made, effectively. Rempe is going to challenge, how much people are going to be into this kind of stuff and opening the door for possibly other guys who are watching, because
no kidding, other teams in the division thinking it used to be Reeves in that division saying, well, Washington's got to go to, or Washington had Wilson and the Rangers went and got Reeves because they're like, we're tired of this guy pushing us around.
Right.
Now is it going to be Rempe, where it's like, this guy's going to be around for 10 years and we got to play these guys 5 or 6 times a year. And we do not want that guy making a mockery of a team. What's the response going to be?
Well, the only thing that could change all of this, guys, is if the kid gets hit on the button and knocked out. Like that'll change, because he's leading with his chin, and that's what some of these tough guys are talking about.
Yep.
Can't do it every night. If he's taking bombs to the head too.
That kid that from Columbus gave him a couple. He got a couple hammer times.
He got him. He sure did. And you're right. It was like that could change everything. And again, I don't know how, because he probably hasn't fought like a lot of these. That's another thing. You talk about the heavyweights of the 80s and 90s. They were fighting when they were 14, 15, 16, 17. This guy, no one fights in junior anymore. So if you're coming up, you're not fighting. Junior, college players don't fight. If you're learning the ropes in the NHL, that's a scary proposition. But, the teams are watching, and I guarantee other players are watching. There's a long history of players that made it to the league and made a career out of it because they said, I don't want to ride the buses anymore, and if I got to fight to do it, I'll fight. And I'll hit, and I'll do whatever I got to do. I'll be an agitator. I'll be a pest. I don't care. I want to get there. And that's kind of what this kid's done. He knows he's not Panarin. He's not putting up 80 points, 90 points, 100 points. How does he stay in the lineup? Hit, fight, be a leader, be a guy that other guys love to have around. You make a career out of that in the NHL. It's a very unique sport that way. All right, Bruce Cassidy in about 15 minutes of the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas in town tomorrow night. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Raptors back in action in Indiana tonight. Jays are playing PGA Tour, making their Florida swing. Your boy Jake Knapp got it done yesterday down in Mexico with his mullet.
Dude, I thought that guy was going to... All I kept thinking about, and this is so weird to think about you watching golf, enjoying my own time on a Sunday. First 3 holes, I'm like, this guy's Hayes on 18 at Coppenwood. Like, he was hitting his driver all over the yard.
I know.
And I'm like, this guy just is not ready for this, and he's going to shoot 80 today, and it's going to be embarrassing. And he just hung on, man.
He hit 2 fairways yesterday. 2. Do you know how tough that is to win on the PGA Tour on Sunday?
I find a way to hit more than 2.
Exactly. Like, even when I am slashing, I'm hitting 4 fairways, maybe 5. This guy hit 2 fairways yesterday.
Dude, I like watching that story. I know the fields aren't loaded with studs, but I'll watch a Jake Knapp win his first tour event.
Yeah.
And the way he hits it, that probably would have done. That's going to do wonders for his game. You'll see that guy show up in some big tournaments with his length.
Yeah.
With his length and the way he hits it, he'll show up again.
Yeah, I got a big Ducks fan, like huge Anaheim Ducks fan, so big hockey guy. And I saw his girlfriend, I believe is Canadian, flew down to Mexico on Sunday.
Dude, the guy was a bouncer 2 years ago. He was bouncing in clubs, and he just won on tour.
It's a wild story. It's like a Happy Gilmore story.
It is.
All right, Bruce Cassidy of the Vegas Golden Knights coming up. Vegas in town tomorrow night. We'll catch up with Bruce. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.